and welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast, a podcast where we have conversations with amazingly talented people who are deeply passionate about their area of work. In this episode, we have a conversation with Bruce Davie, the Chief Technology Officer of VMWare, heading the Asia Pacific and Japan. Bruce has over 30 years of experience and his area of expertise revolves around cloud, machine learning, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. With so much talk happening about data privacy, I figured it would be fantastic to have a conversation around securing our digital future. Let's jump straight into the conversation with Bruce Davie. Bruce, thank you so much for coming on the Movers and Shakers podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
How can companies secure their data and that of their customers? You know, it's such a key thing in these days when there's so much of data breach. What would be your advice?
Obviously, if there was an easy answer, people would have already figured it out and there wouldn't be any breaches. But what I will say is that there's kind of the time-honored idea of defense in depth, which is to say, you do a lot of things and hopefully the aggregate of those things leads to a good result. I guess from my own experience, the thing that we've really been pushing for a few years now is to bring back this idea of least privilege. And that's actually an old computer science idea, but it pretty much got thrown away largely due to the way we built networks. That if you think about sort of the history of networking, there was a real focus on how to make it just easy to get connectivity. And the problem with that is now kind of lots of connectivity is the default. So conversely, the idea of least privilege is any system or user should only get access to the set of resources that it needs to do its job. And when you apply that principle to networking, you would say we shouldn't have these great big flat wide open networks. We should have very precisely defined little network segments. And that a set of resources that are needed to communicate to do a particular job should be able to communicate, but you shouldn't have this kind of wide open access between a lot of different systems that really don't need to be connected to each other. So that's been the big shift that we've been working on for the last really 5 years, trying to get people to move from these relatively open networks where there was a lot of opportunity for lateral movement of attacks to moving to one where there was a more precisely defined scope of which machines or devices should be able to communicate. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the first things you should be thinking about is how to use this idea of carefully defined connectivity to make sure that the opportunity for a breach is greatly decreased.
Do you think emergence of blockchain could be a solution because it's a very decentralized platform? What's your opinion?
So I'm sure blockchain is going to be a solution to something, but I'm not sure we know the answer to what it's going to be a solution for yet. The way I think about blockchain at this point, I don't think it's going to solve security. I'll say that right off the bat. It might have some applications to security, but the thing which blockchain seems really good for is if you wanted something to go into a database, but you didn't want that database to be centralized, then blockchain would look like a good idea. And conversely, if somebody says, I think we should solve this with blockchain, you might want to ask, could we solve it with a database? But a good example would be if you think about something like a registry of deeds for land ownership. Typically that's done in a central database, normally run by a government. That seems like a pretty good idea, except that sometimes those databases actually get corrupted, and now all of a sudden people find that the land they thought they owned, they don't seem to own it anymore. So in that environment, you might say, well, a distributed ledger where no one entity could come and corrupt that ledger would be a great thing if you could actually make that database more secure. So in that respect, you could certainly see how certain types of data corruption might in fact be helped by blockchain. I certainly don't think blockchain should be considered a silver bullet for security, but I think it has applications and we're really still trying to figure out what the best ones are.
Got it. So VMware recently bought this company called E8 Security. For it uses artificial intelligence and machine learning as a way to detect cyber threat. So how does that work?
So I'll say I'm not deeply familiar with the internals of what they do at E8, but I've sort of probably read the same blog post that you have. But let me just say that the basic idea is that to get a good idea about any kind of threat, you need to understand kind of what's good behavior and what's bad behavior. And AI is actually really good at that kind of classification. Everybody knows at this point that AI algorithms, machine learning algorithms, do a very good job of classifying pictures, right? You can, just look at how Facebook will automatically tag faces based on, people that you've tagged previously. So AI is really good at that sort of thing. You can use that same kind of AI technique to classify normal behavior and anomalous behavior in endpoints, whether it's mobile devices or desktops or whatever. And so having that kind of capability as part of an overall digital workspace, which is what we're doing with E8, clearly there's a lot of mileage there. And I guess more broadly, I think this is the overall VMware approach to AI, is to say AI thrives on data. And we get access to a lot of data. Our products are typically getting a lot of data from devices, from things that are under management. And so there's a really big opportunity here for us to apply machine learning algorithms to the data we have to make our products more intelligent. So we're actually doing that across a wide range of different products, and E8 is just kind of one piece of that overall story.
Got it. Thank you. The writing is clearly on the wall, Bruce. Digital is the future. But yet, why do you think some of the companies are lagging behind when it comes to digital transformation?
Well, obviously, it's always difficult to change away from doing business the way you've always done it to do something new. And, one formulation of that is the innovator's dilemma, that if you're in a business that's profitable, you don't necessarily want to go and disrupt that business at the risk of losing your kind of cash cow. But the flip side is, if you don't disrupt your own business, somebody else will do it for you. And so the idea of digital transformation in large respect is you should start disrupting your own business before somebody else does. Clearly, not everybody's going to be willing to do that. And there's a pretty big kind of cultural shift, and organizations don't change overnight by any means. And you're really talking about moving from an environment where the company would have previously viewed digital technology as some kind of backroom function that was just there to, keep account records or do kind of things that are not maybe considered as central to the business. Digital transformation really involves bringing digital technology to the forefront, where even if you're not in a business that's primarily about digital technology, nevertheless you make it part of your business. And you see this with companies that maybe manufacture sporting equipment suddenly saying, actually, we're doing digital transformation and we're going to have mobile apps that our customers can use to customize their equipment. So that's the kind of shift you have to be thinking about, and it's really driven by a willingness to change organizational culture in order to keep the business innovative and competitive.
Great, thank you. So what are the right metrics, Bruce, in your opinion, on how CIOs, chief innovation officers or chief information officers should track to measure the success in the digital marketplace in their own company?
So I don't know if there's a really easily quantifiable metric, but the first thing is, a CIO traditionally has been measured on things like, do they keep the systems highly available? What's their uptime? Do they control costs? Those things don't go away. So you have to keep on doing the basics. Otherwise, you don't get the right to sort of play in the more innovative space. So that's probably the first thing to say, is traditional metrics don't go away. Then there are other new metrics like, did you contribute to revenue? We have a good story from VMware of how our CIO developed some applications for internal usage, was used by VMware employees, and then we started realizing that it was so valuable that we could take that functionality and start putting it into our own products to make it available to our customers. So that now means the CIO's actually contributing to revenue and to innovation by influencing our product development. So to me, that, how do you measure that? Well, you could certainly say there's some contribution to revenue now coming from the CIO. That would be probably